USC superstar JuJu Watkins just broke her silence on those Caitlin Clark scoring comparisons that everyone's buzzing about. The freshman phenomenon finally addressed the record-breaking headlines in an exclusive interview, and her response is absolutely stunning. Today we're analyzing exactly what JuJu said about those Caitlin Clark comparisons and why her reaction has basketball fans completely shocked. This is the interview moment everyone's talking about, but nobody expected the basketball world to stop talking about two names right now. Caitlin Clark and JuJu Watkins, these two phenomenal talents, have completely transformed women's college basketball, bringing unprecedented attention, viewership, and excitement to the game. But here's where things get interesting. The media has been working overtime trying to manufacture a rivalry between these two superstars, constantly pitting them against each other.
There's a lot of players in the country playing Division I basketball. Nobody scored more points in one game this year than you. That's the most.
That's crazy. Yeah. More to come for sure.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark who?
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that. Much respect there.
But is there actually any truth to this so-called rivalry today? We're diving into what's really happening between these two basketball phenomena.
If JuJu was allowed to come out in the draft, Fever they will regret that they took Caitlin Clark number one. Caitlin is great.
Yeah.
He's not JuJu. If they match up in a tournament, 1,000% JuJu is going to pick her up full court.
You look at the way she's built, and you look at the way Caitlin Clark is built. I mean, she can take contact. She can play through contact. She has an adult body as a 18-year-old.
She's super athletic. She will pick her up full court. They're going to have to set a whole bunch of screens to get JuJu off her. And if she ever tries to guard JuJu...
First, let's talk about JuJu Watkins. This USC freshman has been nothing short of spectacular this season. Her scoring ability, court vision, and basketball IQ are off the charts. I had the privilege of watching her play in person, and let me tell you, the television doesn't do her justice. Her explosiveness, her footwork, her ability to create her own shot, it's all elite level at just 18 years old. She's playing with the poise and confidence of a seasoned pro. Now, there's been a lot of chatter about JuJu potentially breaking some of Caitlin Clark's scoring records, and this is where we need to set the record straight. There's actually been some confusion about these freshman scoring records. Some reports claimed JuJu broke Caitlin's freshman scoring mark, but we need to acknowledge that Kelsey Mitchell actually holds some of these records as well. The stats get complicated, but what's undeniable is that JuJu is putting up historic numbers for freshmen. So how does JuJu herself feel about all these comparisons and record talks? We finally got our answer when WNBA media analyst Natalie Esquire sat down with JuJu for an exclusive interview. Now, I haven't always agreed with Natalie's takes, but I have to give credit where it's due. She asked exactly what we all wanted to know in this interview. Natalie directly asked JuJu about surpassing Caitlin Clark's scoring numbers and whether these record comparisons matter to her. Let's break down exactly what JuJu said and what it means when asked about breaking Clark's records. JuJu responded with remarkable humility. She said, "No, not really. It's cool, though. Sometimes I'll see it and I'll be like, oh wow, I didn't even know that." I think that's what a lot of things are, very surprising for me. But yeah, it's not something that I really pay attention to. This response speaks volumes about JuJu's character and focus. She's not consumed by the comparisons or the record chase. She's simply focused on playing her game and helping her team win. This level of maturity from a freshman is incredibly rare. What makes this even more impressive is the immense pressure JuJu faces coming into USC as one of the most hyped recruits in recent memory. The expectations were sky high, and she hasn't just met those expectations, she's exceeded them. But through it all, she's maintained a level head and kept her focus on team success rather than individual.
Seen the narratives for the entire season. It started out with Paige Bueckers at the beginning of the season, where people in the media, a lot of people at some of these big networks, were saying that Paige Bueckers was the Caitlin Clark before Caitlin Clark. And then when it got to the second half of the season, and JuJu has been taking over, she's had a phenomenal second half of her sophomore season.
Trust between how the media portrays this situation versus how the players themselves view it couldn't be more stark. While headlines scream about rivalries and record chases, both JuJu and Caitlin have shown nothing but respect for each other's gains. There's no bad blood, no trash talk. Just two exceptional athletes excelling at the highest level of college basketball. In fact, both players have gone out of their way to downplay any notion of a personal rivalry. When asked about JuJu earlier this season, Caitlin had nothing but praise, calling her an incredible talent and saying she's great for women's basketball. That doesn't sound like a rivalry to me. It sounds like mutual respect between two generational talents. This manufactured drama reminds me of what we often see in sports media. The desperate attempt to create narratives and storylines where none exist. We saw it with LeBron and Kobe, we saw it with Brady and Manning, and now we're seeing it with Caitlin and JuJu. But the reality is much simpler. These are just two incredible basketball players who happen to be playing at the same time. Now, let's address another accusation that's been floating around online. The idea that JuJu is a stat patter who accumulates points in garbage time. I've seen these comments, and frankly, they're ridiculous. Anyone who actually watches USC games knows that JuJu is their primary offensive option throughout the game. Her points come in the flow of the offense often when the team needs them most. Yes, there was that one game where she stayed in late and nearly got injured, which raised some eyebrows, but one instance doesn't make a pattern. The vast majority of JuJu's production comes in competitive game situations, not garbage time. To suggest otherwise is simply not watching the games. What's truly impressive about JuJu's game is her versatility. Unlike some scorers who are one-dimensional, JuJu can get buckets in multiple ways. She can shoot the three, she can put the ball on the floor and get to the rim. She can post up smaller defenders, and she has a deadly mid-range game. This versatility makes her incredibly difficult to defend and is a big reason why she's putting up such historic numbers for basketball. IQ is also elite for a player her age. She understands angles, timing, and spacing at a level that most seniors don't grasp. She knows when to attack, when to facilitate, and when to let the game come to her. These aren't things you can teach. They're instinctual talents that separate good players from great ones. From what I've heard about JuJu off the court, she's equally impressive. I had the pleasure of meeting her mother, and it's clear that JuJu comes from a family with strong values. She's been raised with humility, work ethic, and respect for others. These qualities shine through in her interviews and interactions with teammates, coaches, and fans. The way JuJu carries herself reminds me a lot of how Caitlin Clark handles the spotlight. Both players have been thrust into the national conversation in a way that few college athletes experience the attention. Scrutiny and pressure could easily become overwhelming, yet both have navigated it with grace and poise beyond their years. When you look at their games, there are actually some interesting parallels between JuJu and Caitlin. Both are fearless. Shooters who can score from anywhere on the court. Both have exceptional court vision and playmaking abilities and have elevated their respective programs to new heights. The main differences come in their styles. Caitlin is more of a pure point guard with unlimited range, while JuJu is a more versatile scorer who can play multiple positions. Looking ahead, the future of women's basketball couldn't be brighter with these two stars leading the way while Caitlin is headed to the WNBA next season. JuJu still has several years of college eligibility remaining. By the time JuJu enters the WNBA, likely as the #1 pick in 2027, Caitlin will be an established pro. Then we'll finally get to see them compete directly against each other, and that's what makes this whole narrative so unnecessary. There's no need to pit these players against each other when they're not even in the same draft class. They're on different journeys at different stages of their careers. The comparison doesn't serve anyone. Not the players, not the fans, not the sport. What we should be celebrating instead is how both JuJu and Caitlin are growing the game. Television ratings for women's college basketball are at an all-time high. Attendance records are being broken. Social media engagement around the women's game has exploded. This is the real story. How these talented players are elevating women's basketball to unprecedented popularity. Another aspect that often gets overlooked in these conversations is the immense pressure both players face as the faces of their programs. Every game, there are thousands of eyes on them expecting greatness. The mental fortitude required to perform at an elite level under that scrutiny is remarkable. Both JuJu and Caitlin have shown they have the psychological makeup to thrive under pressure. This brings me to another point that's been discussed recently: the GOAT debate in women's college basketball. There was a controversial segment where analysts debated whether Caitlin Clark could be considered among the greatest ever without winning a national championship. This type of reductive thinking misses the point entirely. Basketball greatness isn't solely determined by championships. It's about impact, statistical excellence, raising the level of your teammates, and advancing the game itself by these measures. Both Caitlin and JuJu are already making their mark on basketball history, regardless of championship hardware. What's particularly interesting about JuJu's freshman campaign is how it compares not just to Caitlin's freshman year, but to other all-time greats when you look at freshman scoring. Seasons historically, names like Maya Moore, Chimi, and Cheryl Miller come up. JuJu is in this rarefied air already, which speaks to her exceptional talent. The coaching staffs for both players deserve tremendous credit as well. USC's Lindsay Goddell has created an environment where JuJu can thrive while continuing to develop her game similarly. Iowa's Lisa Blutter designed an offense that maximized Caitlin's unique talents. Great players need great coaches, and both Ju and Caitlin have benefited from excellent coaching. Looking at their playing styles more closely, JuJu's game actually reminds me a bit of a young Kobe Bryant. The footwork, the mid-range game, the competitive fire she has, that same killer instinct, that same desire to be great. Caitlin, meanwhile, has often drawn comparisons to Steph Curry for her unlimited range and willingness to shoot from anywhere on the court. These are lofty comparisons, but watching them play, they don't seem far-fetched. One area where both players excel is their ability to elevate in big moments. The truly great ones always seem to play their best when the lights are brightest, and both JuJu and Caitlin have shown this quality repeatedly, whether it's hitting game winners, making crucial plays down the stretch, or carrying their teams in tournament games. They rise to the occasion. The work ethic of both players is also legendary. Coaches and team